Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name's Jim. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. Once you've landed on our webpage, there are places where you can find our podcast, different links to places like Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, YouTube, and more. There's also our Boomer's General Store and our Shop Tales on Amazon, where if you purchase something from either one of those venues, that keeps us from having to have commercials like, want to buy some insurance? I don't want any insurance. Let me make your life miserable until you buy insurance. Insurance. Yeah, insurance. You know, stuff like that. So anyway, how are you doing today? Yesterday, I was just making my breakfast. I just eat a piece of toast with honey on it, one sausage patty, and a glass of orange juice. Saturdays I celebrate by having tomato juice. Anyway, that's usually my breakfast, most mornings. And my wife said, "What kind of bird is that out there?" And I went and I looked out our front windows, and there was a turkey vulture sitting there. And I said, "Well, that's a turkey vulture. It must have something dead around there." Vultures are great scavengers. You see them along roadways where something got road-killed. You know, they're not predators, they're just scavengers. All of a sudden there was another turkey vulture swooped in, and I said, "Yep, something's dead over there. I'll put on my boots later and walk out there and see what it is." And before I know it, there's a couple more turkey vultures. And then Kim said, "They're all over the place. Look up in the sky." And I looked up there, and anyway, long story short, there were about 40 turkey vultures. I usually see 2 or 3 of them. I can see them a little bit in the distance, circling like the old westerns, you know, how you're dying in the desert, just crawling, hardly can make it. You know you're going to die of thirst, and the vultures are circling overhead. Well, we see that around here, and what they're doing is they're looking for something that has died or been killed or something dead. But all of a sudden, the sky was full of these turkey vultures. A turkey vulture, I don't know other kinds of vultures, but these guys have a red comb and they look like a turkey in the face, but they are a vulture, a pretty big bird, pretty bird, I think. Anyway, they were like fighting and stuff down on the ground. And I said, that's nothing that's dead over there. I don't know. Maybe it's mating season. Well, during the course of about 20 minutes, they were all gone except for the one sitting there again. And I came to the conclusion that that must be a female, and all those others were males that were attracted to her. And they duked it out until probably she mated with one of them, and the others lost interest and left. And of course, you know, the one she mated with, typical man that you pick up down there at the saloon, and he's done and said, "Thank you, ma'am," and he's out of there, ski-daddled, left her all alone. It was fantastic to watch that, though. I had never seen so many vultures in one spot in my life. They covered our front yard kind of. I mean, my front yard's huge, but they were all over the place and all over in the air, circling and landing and taking off and hopping around, and it was great. I liked that. It was quite the show for a while. But I'm not talking about turkey vultures today. That's not what we are here for. I'm talking about pickles. Pickles, you know, pickles. We have pickles around the house. We have dill slices for hamburgers. I have a 1-gallon jar of those downstairs in the basement refrigerator. And so when my jar upstairs gets empty, I just bring up the gallon jar and fill it back up. We have hot, zesty pickles, and I like those so well, and Kim likes them so well, that we have about 6 jars of those downstairs in what we call our grocery stores, the pantry downstairs. We have relish, both dill relish and sweet relish. I like sweet relish. It's a takeoff from when I was a child eating tuna fish. My mom would put sweet relish in the tuna fish and mayonnaise, and so I still do that. So I keep the sweet relish for whenever I have a hankering for tuna fish. You know, you open the can of it and mix it up with mayonnaise and relish, and I like to put a little shredded cheese in there anymore. Have a tuna fish sandwich, but I don't eat them very often. But I do want my relish there when I have a hankering for tuna fish sandwich. We also have gherkins. We have dill slices, just in case we have barbecue. Kansas City barbecue is whatever kind of barbecue you have, if it's pork or brisket or ribs or whatever. You have white bread and dill slices. That's your basic Kansas City barbecue. Of course, with Kansas City barbecue sauce, whatever brand you prefer. But all these pickles around the house made me wonder about pickles. I had an epiphany the other night that I had to do a podcast on pickles. So I wrote it down in my notes, or spoke it into my phone notes, and I looked at it yesterday and I started putting my outline together. So here goes. Cleopatra claimed eating pickles made her beautiful. Beautiful, Cleopatra. Just ask Mark Anthony. The average American eats 8.5 pounds of pickles a year. That equals about 20 billion pickles consumed in America every year. Pickles were first created between 2030 BC and 2400 BC. The phrase "in a pickle" was introduced in Shakespeare's play The Tempest. Pickles are a good source of probiotics, or good bacteria. America got its name from explorer Amerigo Vespucci, whose nickname was the Pickle Merchant. That's cool. Dill is the most popular variety of cucumber pickles, and cucumber pickles are the widest known type of pickle. And these types of pickles are dill, full sour, half sour, sweet, bread and butter, gherkins, corchones, I hope I said that right, corchones, maybe, pickled peppers, that's jalapenos, pepperonis, banana peppers, cherry peppers. You can pickle about anything, though. Beets, cauliflower, onions, okra, carrots, eggs, fruits. Now, cucumbers are technically a fruit, kind of like tomatoes, I guess. You can pickle meat and fish. Those eggs, though, I remember, maybe it still happens. When I was a kid or young man, whatever, I go into a bar, when I was a kid, it was with my folks. But there were pickled eggs on the bar. Maybe there still are. I have never, ever tried one of those. Of course, I don't frequent bars too much anymore, but I think if I did, I still wouldn't have tried one of those. Oh well, let's see here. The comic strip Pickles by Brian Crane features Earl and Opal Pickle. It started in 1990. It's a 4-panel comic strip with Sunday Comics also. Earl Pickle is quite the guy. He's always getting into something, and Opal, his wife, tries to keep him on the straight and narrow. It's a great comic strip. If you've never read it, you ought to look it up. I started reading it because my grandparents on my dad's side were Earl and Edna. So I like Earl and Opal. I do. It's probably my favorite comic strip. I try to read a few of those every day. Laughter is good medicine, So I stay away from political cartoons. Approximately 4,110 people are named Pickles or Pickle in the United States, besides Earl and Opal. So if your last name is Pickle, Welcome to my world here. Our song of the week is Groovin' by the Young Rascals. It was written by band members Felix Cavalieri and Eddie Bigatti. This great song was released in 1967 and was inspired by Cavalieri's girlfriend, as he only got to see her on Sunday picnics due to a heavy touring and recording schedule. It reached number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100. The Young Rascals changed their name to the Rascals in 1968 with their release of A Beautiful Morning. Groovin' on a Sunday afternoon. You know, it may be kind of strange that I do a podcast about pickles. I don't know. I've talked about running out of podcast episode ideas before, but just a common everyday thing, something as simple as a pickle. And not really simple, the making of a pickle. They have to soak that brine in vats outside so that they don't become moldy and full of bad things. I know flies flying around your pickles are a bad thing, but that's how they produce a pickle. I found this kind of fascinating as I was reading up on pickles. Who'd have thunk it? But there's things in this world that we all take for granted so very, very much. It's a big part of our lives when you add them all together. We're so enthralled with things like all the technology that's out there, the internet, television, music, cars, barcodes, and rocket ships that are learning how to finally land back on Earth instead of crashing into the ocean, and all the stuff that takes all of our attention away from the simple things in life. A simple thing like a hug, like a handshake. You know, simple things like watching children playing in a playground. Simple things like realizing that those kids are your grandchildren. You know, simple things like mowing the grass or washing the dishes or making the bed. Going to the grocery store or talking on the phone with one of your kids that lives 1,000 miles away. I hope that you don't take all that simple stuff for granted, but embrace it and realize that it's the little things in life that life is all about. Sure, we all like to take splashy vacations, buy new cars, live in a wonderful home. And if you're blessed enough to do those things, that's great and that's wonderful. But without those little things, those day by day, everyday things, life would be so empty, all the money in the world couldn't fulfill your need for one simple smile for someone. Well, that's about it. Pushing lunchtime here. I think I'm going to make a sandwich, have a couple of those zesty pickles on the side. They're really good. They're sliced up, and we don't get the super hot ones, but they're tangy and they're delicious. I'm not even sure if they're a dill or a sweet. I don't know. They're just zesty, like my zest for life. Keep that zest for life even if you don't eat a zesty pickle, and always be kind. I'll be back next Wednesday. Thank you for riding along today. If you like this podcast, all I ask is that you share it. Keep on the sunny side. Peace out.